Welcome to the Walkaround presentation for Manitou MLT840. Manitou MLT840 is the top of the range agricultural machine from Manitou. MLT, why MLT? Manitou, loader, telescopic. When we talk about the 840, it's got 8 metres of lift height, 4 tonne of lift capacity, 137 horsepower, and it's a full power shift transmission on this machine. We're going to take you for a little bit of a walk around, show you the key features of the machine. But just before we do that, people ask us why Manitou? What's the difference between Manitou and some other brands on the market? Well, there are 3 main reasons. There's the performance, the quality, and the total cost of ownership, which is a big part of it when it comes to the Manitou brand. Our resale values, our fuel economy, all of those factors mean that the total cost of ownership on a Manitou is far superior to anything else on the market. Anyway, let's take you for a walk around the machine. Starting at the rear of the machine, let's just talk a little bit about the monoblock chassis and the strength that comes from that when we talk about the Manitou product. The chassis is a double monoblock chassis. It's basically 2 box sections, which gives the machine much greater torsional strength. Okay? The chassis is manufactured from a one-piece 20mm steel plate that runs the length of both sides of the machine, again giving it that really strong chassis that obviously allows the machine to get the power from the wheels to the chassis to push and pull these in loading applications. We use what we call a PW type bolt. PW type bolt pins, they give much greater strength than some other types of fixing mechanisms, and obviously very rigid in that respect. When we talk about the chassis, you can see the substantial axle stops on the rear here, and then obviously we've got the load sensing system. The safety system is a strain gauge that measures the deformation of the axle, that then relays a signal back to the cab to tell you, obviously, if you're in a safe working position. Anyway, let's keep walking around. Okay, so still at the rear of the machine, just going to illustrate one of the key points at the rear of this machine, and that's the boom pivot point. The boom pivot point on all Manitou MLTs is very low, best in class. And you may ask yourself, well, what's the advantage of that? The advantage of the low boom pivot position is the visibility all around the machine. So it's obviously much safer in terms of its operation in confined spaces, pig sheds, feedlots, those types of applications. It's great to have that all-round visibility. So not only do we get the visibility in the rear of the machine, you can also see our standard tow hitch. The towing capacity on Manitou again is class leading in relation to, it has over 10 tonne of capacity. That comes from the drawbar pull of 9,800 Dana, which is nearly 10 tonne, an actual tractive effort from the rear of the machine. So again, very strong performance in that regards. Also, the back of the machine, not forgetting the fact that you can get a number of different services. The rear services can include trailer braking, electrical connections, and also you can get the choice of remote hydraulics. So you can have either single acting or double acting, depending upon the implement or the trailer, the tipping trailer, something like that you might want to run at the rear of the machine. Okay. Another thing again, the lights on the rear of the Manitou, they're actually, as you can see, are within the turning radius of the machine. So the extreme part of the machine at all times is the tyres. The tyres, rubber, they don't make as much damage if they're going to hit something. And of course, occasionally, operating in confined spaces, you may find yourself fully benefiting from the fact that the lights turn inside. So still at the rear of the machine, we've spoken about the rear services, the strong tow bar, and again we mentioned that visibility to the rear. Another good feature on the Manitou is these mud guards. The mud guards on the Manitou, on the wheels, they track with the wheels. The advantage of that is, again, you've got exceptional visibility down to the right-hand corner. So again, safety is paramount when we talk about that. Anyway, keep walking around again. Okay, so on the right-hand side of the machine, you can see again, visibility is paramount with the low mounted boom position. Obviously engine on the side, which is something that Manitou pioneered with the torque converter transmission in around 2000. Basically with that you've got a much lower centre of gravity for the machine. So again, the Manitou product is always very stable, especially in those operating parameters with a big bucket, you're loading out at height, you'll find the machine is very responsive and very reassuring when operating the machine. As far as the actual engine under here, it's a 137 horsepower John Deere engine. It's the latest and greatest, one would say, in terms of the John Deere range. Basically, has full service access just by popping this little panel out here. It says. So from a maintenance perspective, you've got access to both sides of the engine, starter motors, air compressors, everything is basically really accessible at the end of the day. In terms of the cooling system is a hydraulically driven fan. The fan itself, though, what's quite unique about this machine is if the machine is only operating at low temperatures, then the fan will only turn as much as required to cool the engine. Obviously, the harder it's working, the quicker the fan turns. Now, you may think, so well, what's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is a fuel saving. It's quite a considerable fuel saving, around 4% versus some other products where the fan is constantly running. So it's those little things, again, that help you with your total cost of ownership over the life of the machine. So the John Deere engine is coupled to a torque converter transmission. It's a power shift transmission by Dana. It's patented by Manitou. It's called a power shift M shift. The M actually stands for manual. So it's the power shift transmission. It's the first fully automatic transmission in a torque converter machine of this nature, but it can also be used in a manual gear selection. So again, depending on your driving style, the type of work you're doing, this transmission is ideally suited to agricultural applications. It's also a direct drive, straight off the engine, straight off the flywheel at the end. So again, a very strong, powerful machine. There's very little loss of energy from the engine to the transmission to the wheels. Okay. In terms of the hydraulic pump, which again is a very, very crucial component on a telescopic handler, on the Manitou MLT840 with the 137 horsepower machine, we've got 180 litres a minute in terms of the capacity of the hydraulic pump. And the reason we're able to put such a big pump is because of the side-mounted engine, and the way that the engine is mounted east-west allows us to fit the pump under the boom, a substantial amount of room to get that nice big pump in there, give us those quick hydraulic movements, quicker cycle times, and much better productivity from this particular machine. Okay. So around the front of the machine here, I'm just going to point out a couple of little things. Obviously the mirrors may not seem like an important thing, but all the blind spots you can get being sat on the left-hand side of a telehandler as opposed to being in the middle on a wheel loader. The mirrors and the visibility over the sign to the rear are a real feature of the Manitou to make it easy for the operator to do his job in a safe and productive manner. Coming to the mud guards again, you can see tracking on the front wheel. When we talk about the tyres, Michelin XMCL. Okay, so again, the latest technology from Michelin in terms of tyres. The great advantage of these tyres is when we talk about that TCO, that total cost of ownership, these tyres basically have a very long life in relation to that they're very good compound, they don't scrub out on concrete, you can get a good life out of these machines. So over the course of say 5 years, instead of replacing 2 sets of tyres, you're probably only going to replace one with the Michelin XMCL. So again, it's a real benefit for your total cost of ownership. Focusing now in on the axle, so you've got a Spicer axle. The Spicer axle here, as you can see, we've got 8 wheel studs basically to keep the wheel on. The actual reduction hub itself, again, has been designed to transfer all the power from the chassis, basically from the engine and that powerful transmission to the wheels to give you that great tractive effort when loading. So what you've actually got is you've got 4 reduction gears in the reduction hub here, so you have a very even distribution of the torque throughout the reduction hub. So again, you're getting the torque evenly distributed. So again, putting the torque down to the ground to give you that greater pushing power, which is really important in that bucket work we do a lot of in agriculture. Moving around to the front of the axle, as I said before, it's a Spicer axle. The Spicer axle has brakes immersed on the front here. The other great thing about the Manitou is brakes on both axles. Now you may say, oh, well, what's important about that? So basically when you're operating the machine, brakes on the front axle only cause a pivot, cause the machine to pivot when braking. Whereas the brakes on both axles cause the machine to pull up in a nice, smooth and even manner. So again, from an operator's perspective, you really see the benefits of the Manitou when you're in those loading applications and how comfortable the operator can feel, or the lady, when they're operating a machine. As far as the axle itself goes, it's attached by 4 bolts on either side. So again, it's that robustness that we're looking for the longevity. The longevity of the machine gives you that resale value, that total cost of ownership again is a big part of it. All right, so again, you can see, quite simple, if I squeeze in under here, you'll see the silent mounted blocks, the rubber blocks for the mounting of the cab. So there's a few little things there you can point out. The other key thing which we haven't pointed out already is the steer cylinders. The steer cylinders on these Spicer axles are mounted very high. They're out of the way, so any sticks or debris might get thrown up. The actual cylinder is not going to get damaged. Okay, so that's why it's very important to have that up high. Even though the Manitou's got exceptional ground clearance, having that cylinder high really does keep it protected. Okay, so still at the front of the machine, talking about the axle again, one key thing I forgot to mention before was the limited slip differential on the Manitou as standard. So again, the limited slip diff, basically that means that if one wheel is losing traction, obviously the limited slip diff will make sure that the traction is still delivered to both the front wheels on the axle. Coupled with the rear oscillating axle, the Manitou has exceptional rough terrain performance. So a combination of ground clearance, good torque, good drive from the wheels, as we spoke about before, limited slip diff, a really powerful performer in those rough terrain conditions that we find on your average Australian farm or the New Zealand farm. In relation to steering modes, okay, so at the moment we've got it an all-wheel steer. There are actually 4 steering modes on the Manitou. There's all-wheel steer as we have it now, 2-wheel steer for highway use, then you have crab steer for getting against walls into tight areas, but then where we have a unique feature called Manny Crab. Manny Crab is where we basically able to lock the rear wheels in position and then use the front wheels to track along along a fence line or something similar. So again, a unique feature. Not going to be for everybody, but certainly can be quite advantageous in feedlots, piggeries, applications like that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the boom now. It's relatively important when you talk about telescopic handlers, you have to agree. One great thing about the design on the Manitou is the quick attach. The quick attach on the Manitou is universal across the MLT range, across the Manitou range. The great thing about it is it's a 900mm wide carriage. Okay, we have a simple pin to remove the quick attach, to remove the attachment, and it's a very simple process and very fast. We'll show you a little bit more about that shortly. In relation to the actual performance as a loader, the Manitou MLT840 has 148 degrees of rotation. So again, why is that important? When you're loading a high-sided truck, what you don't want to be doing is shaking the bucket to try and get the material out of the bucket. By having 148 degrees, the product will fall out of the bucket nice and easy. So again, it's those little features that mean you're not shaking the bejesus out of the machine, so it's going to survive. Total cost of ownership is ensured yet again. Okay, so I'll show you a little bit about the quick attach in a moment, and also the tilt angles and how that's achieved. In relation to the boom itself, the Manitou MLT840 has a patented boom design in relation to the materials and the way it's been designed. It may not look that unique, but it is quite unique when you get into the real engineering side of things. It has a forged head at the front here for strength, has a fully enclosed front. Okay, it's very important again, so material falling over the back of the bucket is not going to come into contact with the tilt cylinder. So you can't even see the tilt cylinder here. It's nestled right up underneath, out of the way, again, like the steer cylinders, protecting it from any damage that may occur in those loading applications. Again, as far as pins go, the PW type pin, very strong, very rigid. So it's again all of those little things that give the Manitou the quality that we spoke about before. In relation to the boom, again, what we have here is the wiper system, the Teflon pads, the Teflon wear pads. Basically, they absorb the grease over the first few hundred hours, and then from then on, you do less and less of the greasing because they actually absorb the grease, which make it, again, as far as maintenance goes, pretty minimal thing to maintain. Again, standard equipment on a Manitou, not an option, but standard equipment, the hydraulic lines to the front of the boom. The hydraulic lines obviously give you the auxiliary power to provide hydraulic flow to open and close attachments, depending upon obviously the type of work that you're doing. The great thing about the Manitou system again is, well, we have a system called ECS. ECS is an easy connect system, so you actually don't have to turn the machine off in order to depressurize the lines before you disconnect them. Okay? So that's another outstanding feature that obviously comes standard with the MLT840. Again, talking about the linkage on the MLT, the Manitou loader telescopic, you get exceptional breakout force from this system, but you also get very quick movements. The actual breakout force, the excavation force, that comes from this very substantial tilt cylinder, but it comes from this main section here, okay? The speed of rotation actually comes from this secondary piece here that makes sure that the rotation and crowd and dump is very fast, again, to make sure you've got maximum productivity coming from the machine and its loading operation. So again, it's a Manitou loader telescopic, really designed for those ag applications. Let's take a look at the cab now on the MLT840. The cab on the MLT840 is a ROPS and FOPS protective structure. It's a very large working area. So what I mean by that is it's a very large, spacious cab. So again, what we mean is that the operator has a very comfortable work environment. It's the sort of thing you'd expect to find on a tractor, not necessarily on a loader or certainly a telescopic hammer. So again, class leading in that respect. You can see the work lights are standard on the front. Can't quite see it, but the air conditioning mounted up in the rear. As far as the services, you've got access to a number of services here, water washer bottle, things like that. The reason they're on the exterior is there is very good sealing on the cab on the MLT840, which is ideal for Australian conditions, the dusty environment that we have. It means that you don't have to be opening up panels in order to refill bottles and things like that. But anyway, let's take a look inside. Another key feature on the MLT840, ease of access. Again, you might be getting on and off the machine a number of times during the day to change the attachment. You've got great ease of access with a nice wide step, not too high. Nice wide entry point, and in we go. Let's take a look inside. So again, on the 840 we spoke about the productivity and the performance of the Manitou product. A lot of that will come back to a comfortable operator's environment. Again, the spacious cab on the MLT840 means exactly that. Not only is it a spacious cab, it's very well equipped, very ergonomic in terms of how it's been designed to minimise fatigue on the operator.